Welcome back. This week marks 20 years since Hurricane Katrina, a storm that killed more than 1,800 people and left communities in ruins. The aftermath, of course, led to changes at the Federal Emergency Management Agency. But in an open letter sent this week to the White House and Congress, nearly 200 current and former FEMA employees are warning the Trump administration has left the agency underprepared to respond to future major natural disasters. It's called the Katrina Declaration and signed by 36 employees, while dozens more chose to remain anonymous. They write, since January 2025, FEMA has been under the leadership of individuals lacking legal qualifications, Senate approval, and the demonstrated background required of a FEMA administrator. They addressed last month's deadly floods in Texas by warning, quote, FEMA's mission to provide critical support was obstructed by leadership who not only questioned the agency's existence, but placed uninformed cost-cutting above serving the American people and the communities our oath compels us to serve. Former FEMA Press Secretary Jeremy Edwards joins me now. He was among those who signed the Katrina Declaration. Very good to see you again. You also worked at the White House at one time.
Good to see you.
Walk us through how FEMA has changed in the last 8 months and what it is that is most concerning to those of you who signed on to this.
Yeah, well, good to be here. And a lot has changed in the last few months. I think the biggest thing is that a lot of the brain power that was in the agency has left through the front door. In recent months, we saw the leader of the National Response Coordination Center walk out. We've seen regional administrators who covered areas in Texas to Georgia and Florida also leave the scene. In total, about 2,000 of the full-time permanent workforce has left the agency. To put that in perspective, there's about 6,000 full-time permanent workforce. So that's about a third of the workforce gone, and dozens of senior-level officials. So that, to me, is very concerning, not just because we're losing good people, but we're losing decades of knowledge and experience of dealing with emergencies and dealing with disasters. I think beyond that as well, the biggest thing that I've also seen is just these increased hurdles being placed in front of the career civil servants who are just trying to do their jobs. You've probably seen reported here and elsewhere that there's now a requirement that every $100,000 needs to get personally approved by the Secretary of Homeland Security. Well, as you might know, a hurricane can cause about $100,000 worth of damage in minutes. So having an agency like FEMA who doles out tens of billions of dollars to help communities recover, that is going to create some roadblocks to them getting that assistance to people in a timely manner.
It's just slowing it down, basically,
Exactly.
because it's all got to go through her, at least in the way it's currently set up.
Yeah.
We're near the peak of hurricane season. Is there a specific concern about the kind of natural disaster that may not be properly responded to by the agency?
I think, well, that's a great question. On the one hand, hurricanes do give us a lot of lead time. We can see them coming in. The flip side of that is they impact a lot of areas. So, like the Texas flooding, while it was a tragic event, and, our thoughts and prayers are with all the families who are dealing with that down there, it was a relatively localized event, and impacted a small amount of area. Whereas a hurricane, like we saw with Helene, hits North Carolina, and we had about, I think, over 5 states get emergency declarations for that disaster. On the other hand, you have events like the Maui wildfires, where that is what we would call a no-notice event. Right. It's something that just happens all of a sudden, a fire breaks out. Now we're in a different kind of circumstance. Same with tornadoes, flooding, flash floods, et cetera. So on the one hand, you are concerned about these no-notice events because if the administration is having to do these kind of bureaucratic steps to get funding approved, as we saw in Texas, where it took, I believe, up to 72 hours for urban search and rescue to get to the scene when it typically takes about 6. That's very concerning. On the other hand, when you have a hurricane impacting 7 to 8 states, and we've seen delays in major disaster declarations, we've seen the personnel leaving, we've seen certain regions without leadership, that also presents its own challenges and concerns.
So you won't be surprised that the Homeland Security Department has responded to this. And in part, they say, quote, it is not surprising that some of the same bureaucrats who presided over decades of inefficiency are now objecting to reform. Change is always hard. It's especially for those invested in the status quo. But our obligation is to survivors, not to protecting broken systems. Your thoughts?
I think that everyone would agree that there are ways that we can improve FEMA. And there were things that we were doing during the Biden presidency under Administrator Criswell to improve the agency, to get stuff into people's hands faster. For example, they came out with serious needs assistance, which was instead of having to wait to go through the process of getting approved for funding, you get an automatic check of $750 to help you with serious needs,
Right.
baby formula, diapers, food, what have you. So there are ways that you can make the assistance come faster, and I think anyone's going to applaud that. Now, what's happening now, I would say, is anything but efficient. Like we've discussed, they're creating intentional roadblocks to slow down the disaster assistance process. Another example we haven't gone over yet, they are now requiring everyone who signs up for FEMA assistance to have an email address. Now, that might sound like a small change, but only about 80% of people apply through the website. The rest of those people are calling in or going to a center to get assistance, and we've already seen stories reported that people have shown up for assistance. We're told they don't have an email address, and we're sent away to go set one up before they can come back and do that. That's also problematic.
Or they have lost their computer and phone in the storm.
They might have lost their phone or computer in a storm, or also, about 20% of people in this country don't even have internet.
Right.
So the fact that you're making changes like that, to me, doesn't suggest that you are interested in creating efficiencies. To me, it suggests that you either don't know what you're doing, or you are unintentionally or intentionally creating more hurdles for people to get assistance.
Well, look, transitions from one government to the next do create these kinds of disagreements. The concern here, of course, is that you guys are worried that this could lead to really disastrous consequences. May that not happen, but we appreciate you coming in to talk about it. And kudos to your colleagues, current and former, for putting their name on the letter, because we don't hear about that happening too often.
Yeah, and if
it shows you how serious they are concerned about this.
I would just like to say thank you to my former and current colleagues, many who are still working in that building. There's a lot of risk associated with that, especially when the administration is making them do polygraph tests to show their loyalty to the admin and firing some of them unceremoniously. So I know that took a lot of courage. I just want to say thank you to them who are brave enough to do that.
All righty. Jeremy Edwards, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Thanks for coming in.